So this is attacking the Allies. So there's I think some pretty funny bits about this, but my favorite is the Russian trying to reach into Germany, and look what the German has done to his hand. That's pretty brutal. Austrians standing firm, Germans here on their trench line, and they show the French as a paper or a tin soldier. I don't know what Italy's doing. So this is called the Dardanelles, just straight up here to the Black Sea. The capital of the Ottoman Empire is right here. What did most people still call the capital of the Ottoman Empire back then? Anyone know? Yeah, even though the Ottomans, and today Turkey calls it the city, Istanbul, just the city. No way to get supplies up to the Russians through here. See the lock? And key. And a few other things I find pretty funny. This looks like a horror creature, or horror character, Slender Man. He did special topics when you're about mysteries. And I don't know what the Netherlands is doing, but that's big work. So, almost immediately both sides decide to widen the wall. And 1914, oh, by the way, does anyone know, I've mentioned this, I think a couple times, what kind of map is this called? Where they spread it out, so you can at least get, kind of north-south directions. Okay. Yeah, that's a Mercator projection. So they spread out places on both poles, and you'll find this especially like US, Europe, they make the northern hemisphere really big. So Greenland is like twice the size of Africa. And it doesn't give you true directions, as most of you probably know. So for example, if you're flying from Minneapolis to Amsterdam, that'd be a good flight, wouldn't it? A few hours in the air. You don't go here. What do? Yeah, you're up like that. So it gives you directions, but it's still not quite true. Well, first off, this would be fighting the colonies immediately. Well, in Africa and Asia, those colonies in red were German colonies. And so right away, there's going to be fighting. For example, the British colony, now Dominion, meaning its relative self-government of South Africa, attacked German Southwest Namibia. Kenya, British and colonial soldiers attacked German East Africa, which is now Tanzania. Then to be called Tanganyika, Tanzania. Germany had islands here, the Solomon Islands. The Australians attacked, even though it was still a British colony. Part of New Guinea was called Kaiser Wilhelm Land. And yeah, I know one of those things. And Australia attacked. But they're part of the British Empire. So there were Australian troops. There were part of the British Empire, but there's Indian troops. You remember how Japan was a British ally during the Franco-Russo-Japanese War? Japan joined the Allies. They thought they were going to get islands in the Pacific. The Marianas Islands are right here. Remember the U.S. colony of Guam? It's in the Marianas. And then the Germans actually own the other islands. That one too. Trench. The trenches went through there?
No, like the very deep part of the ocean.
Yeah, you're right. Some of the trenches like the.
We're like, whoa.
That'd be a heck of a trench line.
In the ocean.
And those islands now are all they're technically self-government, but they're part of the U.S. empire. Because the U.S. would take them in World War II, Saipan-Tinian. Those of you know anything about World War II probably heard of those. And then, almost forgot one thing about this. Tsingtao was a city in Japan that the Germans controlled, so Japan immediately attacked. And there was a German East Asian fleet, a number of medium-sized ships called cruisers and light cruisers, and they took off across the Pacific. And there's going to be two big naval battles. That German fleet will defeat a British fleet right here off of Chile. And then they will be defeated off the Falkland Islands. What's the point? Worldwide war. That's 1914. And then the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers. They and Russia hated each other. There's a large Muslim minority in Russia, not only here like Azerbaijan, but if you look at a world map, the stands right here, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Turkey always said, the Ottomans always said that was part of their empire. And Russia had been trying for years to get the Dardanelles. 3 major wars. So the Ottomans jumped in. 1915, 2 more powers we'll get to really fast. I forgot to write this down, but Italy went on the side of the Allies. Italy was an ally of Germany and then switched. They didn't join the war because they hated Austria. And the Allies made a bunch of promises to the Italians. We're going to give you all this land, specifically this finger land here, this whole coastline, islands here, and some colonies. All these secret agreements. I should say that both Italy and Japan after the war felt cheated and resentful. Once again, those who read ahead in history might know where that could be going. And then Bulgaria. I know you've been all waiting for Bulgaria to finally enter the war. The rest of this class is going to be very Bulgaria-centered.
That's good.
They joined the Central Powers. And this will be the last country of the Central Powers. They hated Serbia. And so it got a way to outflank Serbia, but also open up connection to the Ottomans. And so, one more thing about Bulgaria before we move on. Are you ready for a Bulgaria tidbit? I guess along this coast right here are the prettiest beaches. Water's turquoise, the beaches are beautiful. Road trip? Huh?
That's good. It's Russia. You go to Malta.
Go to the Baltic.
I've been to Malta. It's pretty.
Malta? I knew someone who lived in Malta. Moving on, 1915, Germany. Malta, I heard Malta's really cool too. The great Ottoman siege of 1648, remember? All right, so here we go. Here we have 1915, shows the railroads because those become important in a second. But the German strategy was this. All right, the Schlieffen path failed, so let's dig deep, dig organized defenses, take the high ground, and hold. You don't need as many men now, and let the French beat their heads against our walls and cause casualties, and then knock Russia out. Knock Russia out. That became their strategy.
Like, we failed in France. Let's
Yeah.
go to Russia instead.
That's exactly. And remember, they wanted Tannenberg. And one more thing. Hey, remember Serbia? The whole thing started with Serbia, then quickly everyone forgot. Well, the Austrians had to divide their army up because of Russia entering the war. Here, and failed both places. Russia took a big hunk of Austria here, and they failed in Serbia. But now with Bulgaria and German forces, they will knock Serbia. Or Serbia. Now, Serbian soldiers would stay in the fight. They did not quit, but almost all of Serbia would be taken. What about the Allies? The Allies kept this secret from their public. They told everybody, we'll be home by Christmas 1915. Every war, it's always we'll be home by Christmas. Yet Britain needed to build an army. They didn't have an army. Sure, you could put men in uniform, but they're not going to be trained. More importantly, you don't have what makes them an army are sergeants, non-commissioned officers. You just can't make someone a sergeant. And you need junior officers, like lieutenants, captains. They didn't have it. It's going to take a year and a half or longer. Britain would not be ready for a real offensive until 1916. And they kept that secret from the public. And so they went through this war, or they went through 1915, they did attacks, implying the war will be over soon, but they knew unless some catastrophe hit the Germans, they have to wait a year. So they lied to both the French and the British population. So what did they do? The British had a navy, so let's blockade. And this blockade would become incredibly effective. Germany had to get a lot of their food as imports and also munition. A big one they had to get was nitrates for gunpowder. That's why Germany finding a way to pull nitrogen out of the air would be one of the greatest scientific achievements in world history. Pull it from the air, you can make fertilizer and gunpowder. Still done today. But where did they put the blockade? Originally, they were just gonna put here. But that would make their small ships that would blockade, like they're called cruisers or destroyers, vulnerable. So the British blockade would be here. Here, 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 and there. That's how they blockade. They're gonna stop any ship going to Germany or eventually to the neutral Netherlands. So they thought that'd be a funnel of supplies in. And that includes ships from what neutral country, at least at first? The United States. You remember the War of 1912? Remember the War of 1812? Impressment. Remember those heady days of the War of 1812? So a similar thing's going to happen with neutrality rights. And then Russia needs weapons. They need munitions. They need ammunition. Russia is going to do, or going to commit all their resources for arms manufacturing. And their population is going to be deprived of so many basic necessities. It's coming. But they thought they could attack in 1916. 1916. So that's the year. That is why Britain is going to be obsessed with trying to get a way to get supplies to Russia. Because they have men, they don't have equipment. Can't go this way, because Germany stops it. You know the obvious reasons why this is very limited this way. Yeah, it gets a little chilly there in the winter. And the only port up in the north that has railway connection, Archangel, is cut off 8 months speed requirements. So there's a Trans-Siberian Railroad. But that is a rickety one-line road, and so that can be counted on for a significant amount. That is why they wanted to force their way here. And then attack in the periphery. Not attack Germany general, their main line, but find places to attack. Britain even contemplated a naval attack in Denmark and coming down, which fortunately they got better of that stupid idea. But they have all kinds of plans. That's why they wanted like Italy to get in. They coerced Greece eventually to enter it. Attack in the periphery. And that's been the British tactics ever, because they always had a great navy. So you've heard the term fronts. This came from World War I. Before World War I, you had army, they'd be in camp, they'd maneuver, fight a battle, go back to camp. With the mass armies and the new equipment, they could fortify an entire line. So the place between two countries, their border, was commonly called a frontier front. And so we have all these battlefronts. That term would come from here. Now, meteorology would come from, or meteorology was just becoming a imperfect science at this time. We all know about weather, predicting the weather, but think about how meteorology and how important it would be to know the weather in a war before you attack. And so they both kind of come together. And so you have meteorology developing their tools to predict the weather and the war going on. So what do you call it when you have a cold air mass that runs into a warm air mass? What do you call that? That's a front. See a cold front coming in, a warm front coming in. Why do they call it front? Because of that. They named it after World War I. There's so many things. So many things. But you like weather? I like weather.
Yeah.
Don't write these down. Let me just tell you the different fronts. Western front, the Russian or Eastern front, soon there'll be a Romanian front, the Italian front, the Balkan front, the Palestinian front, the Mesopotamian front, and the Caucasus front. And soon a home front. So let's go to the Russian front really quick. The Germans committed forces and the Russians tried another offensive, this time against the Austrians, but they ran into an ambush at the twin cities of Tarnor and Gorlice right here. And Tannenberg was a decisive battle. Tarnor and Gorlice destroyed the Crimean Bridge. Just destroyed. They had to pull back. They gave up thousands of square miles and pulled back from here to this line here. I signed for going to my marriage.
Oh, no.
The Germans would have taken more, but they didn't have enough men to hold it. And by all rights, Russia should have just quit right then. They were defeated. They're done. But in 1916, they're going to get the weapons. They decided to stay in the war. Revolution is coming. They would lose 1 million men in that retreat. That kind of suffering, and Russia having suffering at home, it's coming. Next, the Italian front. So the Italians were going to take away hunks of Italy they claimed. Most important, the harbor city of Trieste, right here. And they would attack 11 times. 11 times here. There's a river they had to get across called the Isonzo River. So the 11 battles of the Isonzo. And it's in the Julian Alps. These are pictures from a little bit high up in the Julian Alps. But they're some of the most spectacular mountains in the world. Not only are there peaks as high as 14,000 feet, which it's, I guess it's unreal. I've not seen them. Some of the things in the Winter Olympics were Julian Alps. But there are river valleys that the valleys are 2,000 or 3,000 feet lower than the mountains. Spectacular, beautiful. Can you imagine Italians? Just 2 years ago, they found 4 Italian bodies. And they couldn't find them in the snow and the ice and the ice. As was retreating, they found these bodies almost perfectly intact. There's so many bodies up there. Can you imagine fighting that high up, that sleeping wounded men? Italians lost hundreds of thousands of men and got nowhere. Fascism would begin those horrible battles of another stalemate. In another stalemate. Another front, the Ottomans. So the Ottoman Empire was known as the sick man of Europe by then. And the assumption was they were going to collapse really fast. They didn't. They survived to nearly the end. And that's the amazing thing about the Ottomans. In 1600, the most powerful empire in the world. The most advanced army. Heck, they took, just to give you an idea how far the Ottomans went. The Ottomans conquered all this, all of North Africa, and all the way up into here. And they were advancing even further, but they decided they wanted Vienna. And they besieged Vienna in the 17th century for 1.5 years. It couldn't take. And then they got static, complacent, and they would climb. I should add one thing about the siege of Vienna. Has anyone ever seen the flag of Turkey? The flag of the Osman, where the Ottomans came from, their symbol before they even converted to Islam, was a crescent moon. And that's the flag of Italy, and that would come anytime you might see that as representing Islam, a crescent moon. So, anybody know what pastry would be invented by Austrian bakers during the siege? Croissants. Croissants came from that siege based on that Ottoman flag. And I'm going to speak for all of you when I say everybody loves croissants, right? Should we have a croissant day in here? Were you guys bringing croissants for me to eat? Yeah. Isn't that a great idea? Wouldn't that be a fun day? Maybe we will. I could get some croissants. Would that be nice if you could do it? No. Okay. Remind me, maybe I'll do that after the exam. That'd be kind of cool. What the heck, right? Oh, that reminds me of one thing. I've heard 4 times today that I'm retiring at the end of the show. I'm not retiring. I am not.
Love construction.
Huh?
You love construction?
Yeah. That's Mr. President's
I
name.
might regret that decision. No, do things during the construction. No, I will be here. I am not retiring this year. So, the Palestinian, no, I heard 4 times today. Are you retired? Kind of run me out. I don't blame. Don't get me wrong. Well, the Palestinian front will be one of these fronts. And the thing about it is this. First off, the Ottomans threatened the incredibly important Suez Canal. And they actually attacked it, but they got routed because they couldn't get enough forces because The Sinai Peninsula is a desert and they didn't have water. They literally did not plan for water. And I wish I was making that up because it sounds so obvious, especially for people who like occupy a lot of desert. They should know this. Failed miserably. But in the process for the British to get across and colonial troops, they had a little railroad and a water pipeline. It wouldn't until 1917. And so stalemate. And then here, the cradle of civilization worldwide, Mesopotamia. Along the Tigris and Euphrates River, troops from India attacked there in 1915, advanced up the river, they got surrounded and routed. And that's going to take years. By the way, the Tigris and Euphrates, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, the land between the two rivers has a very catchy name called Iraq. It's Iraq. And then the Caucasus front. Okay, in the Caucasus Mountains. So this is their way into the stands. Here are the stands. And the Ottomans attacked there in the winter. The Caucasus Mountains, there's some peaks over 20,000 feet. Some of the most spectacular mountains in the world. And they didn't have any winter gear, totally ill-prepared. And the Russians, with limited forces, not only routed them, the Russians even took a little bit of the Ottoman Empire. We will come back to this. But the point is, the Ottomans stayed in the war. Now, just like Austria, there's large minority population. Kurds, Armenians, Assyrians. But the ethnic group here, even though there's different subgroups, are Arabs. Semitic people called Arabs. They wanted a pan-Arab state. Remember I told you about a pan-Slavic state? And the British convinced them to revolt against the Ottomans in the Arab Revolt. And the British promised them an independent state of their own, that they will be free to govern for themselves. Do you think the British?
No.
Of course, the British were lying through their teeth. So it started here in the Hejaz, which was a kingdom, but it was under the control of the Ottomans. This is where Mecca and Medina are. French map. I don't know why I chose a French map. Why not? Mecca and Medina. It started here, and by 1917, Arabs on horseback and camel. I said nothing. But they would begin hit and run attacks of the Ottoman Empire. And some of you might have heard of a British officer that went with them. The British supplied them weapons, and his name was Thomas, T.E. Lawrence. You might have heard of the name Lawrence of Arabia. You might have heard of that. He would become one of the most famous soldiers in the war. Okay, think about trench warfare. Nightmare, hell. And so these dramatic hit and run attacks on the desert seem very romantic. So he became famous, even though it's awful. One of the greatest movies ever made, 1962, it's called Lawrence for Me. You ever? Yeah, I'm not kidding. It is that good. It's one of the greats. Now, it is about 3.5 hours long, but it's great. It is a great movie. Okay. Multiple Academy Award winning. It's really cool. But anyways, and then Gallipoli. Gallipoli is that little finger of land on the European side of that peninsula. I'll show it to you in just a second. The little peninsula, a little finger of land in the Dardanelles. And the British thought they could force their way through the Dardanelles into the Black Sea and supply Russia. So this area right here, here's a map from a magazine. This was a really popular style through the early 20th century, right here. And they tried here's the water called the Dardanelles. Constantinople's there, and then the Black Sea. This finger of land here is called Gallipoli. And the British thought if they could take this, knock out the Turkish forts, sail right in. They had no idea what they were doing. They landed, they didn't realize how rugged it was. And then the Turkish army fought with unbelievable courage and were able to hold the British and others, French, but also Australians and New Zealanders in a couple little pockets right here. So Australian forces are being recruited. And they were on their way to Britain through Egypt. And the British got this idea, and we got these troops in Egypt. So these are Australians in Gallipoli. And you can see how rugged it is. Here's them landing. It turned into a microcosm of the whole war. Some of the worst and awful trench fighting within no man's land, sometimes less than 20 feet apart. Just nightmare. Thousands would be killed. And the British would pull out an absolute failure. And this is going to become a massive controversy in the British government. The government would fall because of this, and have a new wartime government. I mean, a big deal. But ironically, 3 countries would get their start out of this. 3 countries. So there are ethnic Turks in the Ottoman Empire, the majority. And after the war, they want to create a Turkey. And what's the term for intense pride for your country?
Nationalism.
Well, where did the Turkish army fight with us? And Gallipoli became a symbol of Turkish nationalism for the country. Australia was just considered an island. And then there were colonies within it. I know we think of a continent today, but not quite yet. There were just colonies within Australia. They didn't consider themselves all from Australia, or like all from the nation of Australia. They might say, we're from Australia, but we're from New South Wales, or whatever it might be. This would call us Australian nationalism. The suffering they went through, the sacrifice they made. To this day, thousands of people from Australia make the pilgrimage to Gallipoli. And so I've never been to Gallipoli. I have friends who have gone there, and they said the whole thing is geared. You're in Turkey, but the whole thing is geared towards Australian tourists, which kind of makes me laugh. The whole thing. Also, you go to little Australia, and so Australian nationalism. That would be the beginnings of Australia and New Zealand. 3 countries, but a failure. The most popular movie in Australian movie history is a movie called Gallipoli from 1980. It's a really good movie. It's very well done. When I used to teach Western Civ, I would show. I used to have room to teach Western Civ. It starred this young actor who is going to become a really famous and also, I think, a little bit crazy. Mel Gibson. I met Mel Gibson. He used to have a ranch in Absarki, Montana. Mel Gibson, right? Yeah. You want to see meeting with him? This is my meeting, Mel Gibson. Hi. Okay, that's my meeting, Mel Gibson. I said hi, and he was like, hey, Montanans, and we walked away. So, the Western Front. This would be the key to the battle, the key to the war. Stalemate on the Western Front. And this is, okay, this is a little bit of an irrigation ditch, but they extended to be a trench. These are French soldiers early in the war. And this is a terrible trench for fighting the war, for fighting the actual battle. Yeah. And the reason why, first off, you want to be deep enough so you can walk. But the other thing is, you don't want a straight line for lots of reasons. First off, a straight line limits the number of soldiers you can get in a trench. If it's zigzag, it's more trench line, more men. But also think of it this way. Let's say the enemy is shelling your position and a shell does hit right in the middle of the trench. The shrapnel goes all the way down the trench. If it's a zigzag trench line, it's only that one little area. Same deal. If the enemy, let's say the enemy takes one part of the trench. If it's relatively straight, they can fire down both lines, can. And so that's not the way the trenches look. That's how you know it's temporary. But the trench lines would start. What do you call it where you kill so many of the enemy they can no longer fight? It becomes a massive battle of attrition. And trench warfare would personify this, even though we saw elements of Petersburg. Remember, no man's land came from Petersburg. So here it's a very generic schematic of the trenches. This is the real deal. This is from an observation balloon. Both sides use observation balloons that will get up to about 12,000 feet, which had to be just miserably cold up there and hard to breathe. Oh, what gas? Plentiful gas did they use to hydrogen? The volunteers? Volunteers to ride the balloon over a battlefield. Balloon busting was a thing. To the brand new fighter planes, they get the bullets with their machine gun, and they would have, they call them incinerators, and they would paint white phosphorus, literally painted on the bullets. And as soon as it fired, it would ignite and be a flaming bullet, as long as it had white phosphorus. Hit the hydrogen, I think you know the rest. So, no man's land. And as war went on, front line, reserve trenches, communication trenches to bring resupply. Oh, by the way, where would you put most of your soldiers? Back here. Because where is the enemy going to shell? And then you run them up. But you have snipers all along here. And water, smallest power. How far can the sniper hit? Yeah. How far away can they hit? 750 yards. 500 yards? I mean, obviously that's a great shot, but these are snipers. So you stick your head up even 3 or 4 trench lines back, you can be dead. Be literally dead. Just pure, always looking. And even though artillery was the biggest killer, at every main point, there'd be a machine gun. And the big thing about machine guns, they don't aim, they just spray bullets out into no man's land if anyone attacks. And they would tumble. Remember barbed wire that was invented in the Americas? They would just put every night, they'd come out and put barbed wire. And they would do things like put a bunch of barbed wire here, a bunch of barbed wire here, and funnel any attack here where they have 3 machine guns and all the cannon aimed. Killed. Machine gunners and snipers were never taken prisoner. Well, they might try to surrender. They just focused. It was rare for a machine gunner to take prisoners. Snipers, no. Nobody's more hated than snipers. So the machine guns would be like this. Yeah, it just fits right on there, almost like I planned it. You don't spray bullets out because the bullets would be scattered over 100 yards. They'd have a regulator where you just go in a little arc. And you just spray bullets out in an arc, then the machine gun next has an arc, and you have overlapping machine guns. So by here, you have to go through 3 different machine guns. So good luck on that when you went over the top. And let me tell you one more story about, looking at this, 2 more stories. First off, here's the easy one. If the Germans are going to dig in to hold out, which is the trench, the left or the right? Which one is the German trench? Right. It's right. Does that kind of make sense? Does it look more organized? That's the German trench. Second, cigarette smoking became a thing in World War I. They've been invented before, but World War I, you can imagine how hard they all smoked. How hard to do it? Pipe, cigarette. And the cigarette companies, they would make a lot of money selling cigarettes. In World War II, they just gave American soldiers cigarettes, knowing they'd be addicted when they got home. So when I was a kid, everyone still smoked. It was a cigarette culture. I mean, you went into a restaurant, everyone smoked. It's ashray and everything. My first grade teacher smoked. I remember she would turn around her ashtray and set it on the table she was talking to me. Flip her ashes in and be talking to me. Oh, we loved Mrs. Hampton. And I still remember she had to money when I was in high school. I remember going to the funeral. It was so sad. I mean, it's not a lot of Mrs. Hampton. But anyways, it was cigarette culture. And when I was, I should add, women were still being told that don't worry about this cancer. You're pregnant. Smoke cigarettes will help with one incident. Yeah, I know. But I knew this when I was a little kid. It was bad luck to light 3 cigarettes off one match. I remember my grandpa telling me that. He was a veteran of World War II. I remember him telling me that. Why? Light the match, light the first cigarette at night. The trenches, the snipers. Second cigarette, they're getting in. The third,